Wearable pumps seem like the saving grace to busy working moms pumping in the workplace. But are they? By the end of this video, I want you to really understand the benefits and the risks of using a wearable pump to manage your milk supply. If you're new here, my name is Allison Tolman. I'm a coach and a breast pump expert. I help career-driven women find peace and control in their pumping experience, going back to work by pumping fast and efficiently to breastfeed as long as they want to. If that sounds like something interesting to you, there's a link down below in the chat to work with me. We help clients every day manage their milk supplies using wearable pumps. So I don't want you to think it's not a thing or not a good idea. I can think of two really clear examples. Monica was an OBGYN, so she had a busy practice. She did OR time. She was able to successfully integrate a wearable pump into her pumping journey and hit her 1-year goal. Kendall also does shift work while pumping for twins. And so a wearable pump is really important to melt into her experience as well. And she has been doing fantastic as well. So it can be done, and it definitely can be easier using a step-by-step plan and our methodology, which we have figured out and packaged into a program for you. So that's there if you want it. But let's dive in today to wearable pumps, pros and cons, risks and benefits. We'll talk about a few different pumps as well. And just really, if you're a working mom considering a wearable pump, you need to watch this video. Okay, let's do a brief overview of the benefits and risks, and then we're gonna dive into a lot of common questions I hear about using wearable breast pumps to give you a better idea of how they work, what scenarios they're good for, and which ones they're not. So the two big benefits of wearable pumps are they are hands-free and discreet. And I know that's a short list, but if you've done any pumping or had any experience with that, you know that those are two really, 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 really big bonuses, right? So not having to use your hands is fantastic, especially if you're trying to multitask and work as well. And then being discreet, so you're not having, your nipples exposed and this pump coming off of you, it's all inside your top, can be really huge, especially for working moms too. So those are the major benefits there. And let's talk about some of the risks that come along with those benefits. The biggest risk is ineffective pumping, and we're going to dive into that more in just a second. Cost is another big one. Not only the cost of getting the pump, but the replacement parts and the long-term maintenance can also be something that can add up pretty quickly for wearable pumps. Flange sizing can be a bit more difficult. Not that it can't be done, but it is more challenging because you can't see anything. And then there often is a learning curve in how to use wearable pumps. They really aren't a pull it out of the box, put it in your bra, push go, and walk along your way like a lot of the marketing may suggest. Okay, so right off the bat, how do we mitigate some of these risks and these benefits? Okay, my number one piece of advice for you is to really get a handle on pumping with a more traditional pump before you switch to a wearable and integrate it in there. If your current plan is to go back to work and you're going to use a wearable there while you're at work and then, breastfeed at home or use maybe a different pump at home, I'm a little worried for you, okay? Especially if you are new to pumping and if you have not had a lot of experience maybe on maternity leave already. Although now, even as I just said that, pumping on maternity leave and pumping in the workplace are really different, not only in the timeline that you are postpartum, but in the situations and scenarios. So anyway, there's another video. I'll put that up top for you with more information there. But figuring out where your milk supply is at, what flange sizing works for you, how to really effectively empty your breasts with a more traditional pump that is easier to do that. Often there's more settings, getting a really solid foundation, and then switching to a wearable pump or seeing how you might add a wearable pump in to complement that is the number one suggestion I have for you if you plan on using a wearable pump long term. Okay, let's tackle several of the common questions I get, particularly for working moms about wearable pumps. The number one thing I can think of, and probably the most impactful, is are they less efficient? The answer to this question is possibly, okay? Maybe not always, but we have a lot of things kind of going against us with this type of pump. And I'm talking about either a wearable pump or like cups that you put in your bra. These are all really similar. This is likely due to the way that they sit on the breast, all right? It's impossible to use a wearable pump or a cup without some level of compression. They sit in your bra. The bra does need to hold it firmly to be able to function properly. So we are using some backwards compression in this style of pump, and there's just no way around that. This can block milk flow a little bit, and it functions differently than what we're used to seeing, right? It's also less like a baby, which is the biological norm, right? So that's also something to consider as well. When we're talking about efficiency, Another thing that comes to mind, and I don't know why this is, but sometimes I do see mothers struggling a little bit more with their letdowns when using a wearable style or a cup. I'm not 100% sure why that happens so often, but a couple of things I can think of as possibilities are the limited number of settings that you often have with wearable pumps and cups. The way that the tissue is stimulated and pulled and stretched, especially when it's compressed a little bit that way. The nipple alignment really needs to be perfect. Yeah, I do have a little bit more room for user error in just some of the scenarios. And so sometimes I am seeing a little bit difficulty getting letdowns as well, which will absolutely affect the efficiency of the milk that you're getting out, right? So there's a couple of things to watch out for. How can you mitigate this pumping less efficiently? A common one that we try is to pump a little bit longer or a little bit more frequently. So it's not uncommon that pumping times extend with wearable pumps just because I think they are just inherently a little more inefficient. Or sometimes we need to add in extra pumps or pump more frequently when we're relying on a wearable pump to manage the milk supply. This also is usually not a terrible thing because one of the main benefits of a wearable pump is convenience, right? You can just kind of put it in and let it go. So it's not like we're having to sit in the pumping room longer or be away from other tasks that we need to do. So that's often not a terribly inconvenient thing, but something that we do sometimes. Kind of just extending pumping times or pumping a little bit more frequently can be a good idea, especially if you're struggling to stick to your pumping schedule. And not that we have a set schedule in mind that everybody follows, but what's your pumping schedule and what is your capacity in your milk supply like? If you're struggling to stick to that, you're missing pumping sessions, a wearable pump might be a nice option for you because I say this a lot inside my program, but I'm going to say it here too, is it is always better to get in a shorter, incomplete session than skipping a session altogether. And so sometimes we can do that. I remember Monica, who I mentioned at the beginning of this, sometimes she would have a 5-hour surgery where she just could not step away because she got a patient on the table, right? And so doing a quick session right in the middle for 5 minutes was better, which is not going to empty all the milk, right? She could get through one letdown usually. It was better than skipping that and waiting till the end. So even using a wearable in that way to kind of help you stick to your schedule, help mitigate some of the other challenges in your life can be a really great way to use a wearable pump. Last thought on this efficiency topic is it's really important to know what is your goal, because the goal is not always to extract every drop of milk that your body is capable of producing, right? And I think sometimes we get stuck in that mindset. So if your goal aligns more with I'm trying to fit this in and make it practical, and I'm kind of okay with maybe not fully emptying the breast here, or I know my breast can tolerate it, or it aligns with other goals in my life, this may be totally fine for you. So really clearly identifying what is your goal here. If it's to get every single ounce of milk out of your breast that your body can create, bad news, a wearable pump may not be the best option for you. Okay, the next question I commonly hear is, can you exclusively pump with a wearable pump? I know we talk a lot about working moms here on this channel, and a lot of them are breastfeeding at home and then pumping while they're separated, but a lot of them are choosing to exclusively pump as well, and that's fine with me, whatever works for you. So can you use a wearable pump to do that? People do it. The people that I see most successful with this usually have previous pumping experience or have a tendency toward easy and abundant milk supply and removal. They typically respond really well to breast pumps, and so things just kind of work. They almost always also start pumping really early in their postpartum period, and even using a wearable in there too. Now, I definitely don't recommend starting with a wearable early postpartum unless you know what you're doing or have a professional helping you with that. But the moms that kind of integrate that in early and frequently tend to do the best. I would say that's probably not the norm, but people do it. And I'm sure I'll get comments on this video of people saying that they exclusively pumped with a wearable pump and it was great. I wouldn't say that that's the most common experience that I see, but it definitely happens. I think one of the main concerns I have with using a wearable pump as an exclusive pump is how long is this pump going to last? So make sure you check the warranty and know where you can get it replaced when and if it dies. Those are really small motors and you're putting them through a lot of wear and tear. So the likelihood that they make it an entire year without having to replace, I would say is fairly low. Some of them we replace frequently because they're dying. They're just not meant to be used that heavily for that long of a time. So that's kind of the number one concern I might have about that. So if you're okay just kind of knowing you might have to replace it at some point, that's great. Having a poor bra fit or poor flange sizing or any of the other aspects of pumping that aren't going well will also put more strain on the motor and you'll be more likely to have to replace that. So just keep those things in mind too. Okay, the next thing we're gonna talk about is expensive versus inexpensive pumps, right? And the market has really shifted here in the last few years. We used to have kind of some really inexpensive, options, like maybe one or two. And then we had two high-end luxury pumps that were $500. And you kind of either had that or these really like cheap unknown brands on Amazon that we didn't know. And for a long time, it was just these really luxury pumps. Now we have a ton of options in the middle. So do we still need to spend $500 on these pumps, or can we get by with some of these more affordable pumps in the middle or even on the low end? I will say that when you're looking at those luxury pumps, for example, the Willow and the LV, those are kind of the originals, and they're still kind of those ones at the top. They can do some things that the other pumps just can't. So the Willow 360, I think they've rebranded it now as that. You can pump in any position. It's the most sterile option for you. It has constant suction. There's really just like not a lot of other pumps on the market doing that. That one is particularly tricky to use and get to know. So I recommend working with a professional on that pump just because it is so unique. But if you need one that allows for full flexibility, that's the only one that's doing that, right? The LV has some really unique features as well. It is definitely the quietest breast pump on the market. It's also one of the most discreet. And it has a really gentle suction that's actually really hard to capture on a graph because it looks kind of similar to most pumps, but whatever they're doing makes it feel really, really, really gentle. And so, those pumps do have some things to offer that the other ones just don't. Once we start dropping down into the like $300 to like $100 to $300 range, those pumps tend to be a lot more similar. We're also seeing some really nice pumps come into that category. And so a lot of moms are going for pumps like the Willow Go, the Zomi Fit, Tommy Tippy, the Parafit, a lot of other ones kind of falling into that nice realm that is not $500, which is kind of nice. The Willow Go has probably the closest vibration style to the Spectra. It's also really user-friendly. I find myself recommending that a lot, especially to Spectra users. The Zomi Fit is also a really nice pump that we're seeing good results with. It does have faster cycle speeds, which is really nice. And it's on the lower end of the budget as well. So that's a really interesting one to keep in mind. Tommy Tippy one is a little bit tricky to get started, but is really giving good results. So that's another one to explore. The Parafit is a really interesting one. That one has the most diversity in cycle speeds that we've seen so far. It also has a soft silicone flange, so they're really doing some stuff that is unique and different. That one was a fun one to hit the market because they did try some new things all in one. So I love seeing the technology kind of come and explore, and some of these companies are listening to moms on what they want and some are not. There's a couple of new Lancino wearable pumps, neither of which are really my favorite. But again, it's like that bang for your buck kind of thing. Anytime I see a cheaply made or really, really basic pump being sold for more than it's worth, that's always a little bit of a red flag to me. But a lot of them are working really similarly. And then you have some really inexpensive pumps, so let's say $100 or less. And these are a little bit more hit and miss. Sometimes, every once in a while, we are seeing a really high quality pump come that is inexpensive. And you're like, dang, that's awesome. It also depends on your goals. If you're not looking for the quietest or the most intuitive pump, sometimes you can get a pump on Amazon for $30, $40 that is a little loud and a little bulky, but gets the job done and good for you, Some good budget option wearable pumps that I tend to like are the NCBI pump is a nice one. The Mom Med, I think it's S21. Yeah, I think that's the one it is. The Peru P10 is a nice one. I think the Bella Baby has a couple. I can't remember. That one has some interesting features as well. Yeah, a lot of different things. I actually did a live with Jessica Anderson from Genuine Lactation recently where we talked about a lot of those different pumps. I think it was in the new Lancino pump where we ended up diving into a lot of those other wearables. I'll put a couple of different videos with her down below. We've chatted about wearable pumps several times. You gotta be careful sometimes. Mom Cozy pumps are fine. The pump quality is all right. And I do see a lot of marketing and ads for these, so a lot of moms end up with them. But you got to kind of watch the warranties and the companies that you're working with. Sometimes you might think I don't care, I just need a pump that works. But when you have to get replacement parts or when you have to replace a motor that's gone or, just some other things, it does matter the company that you're buying things from, especially if you're investing some money in there. So just be cautious of which ones you're getting, where you're getting, can you replace them in the warranties? Those are all really important things to consider when you're looking at wearable pumps. And then anytime we're looking at wearable pumps from unknown companies, it's really a gamble. All right. So some of the things that I look for are, do they sell a lot of other things besides pumps, or are pumps their main focus? Because if they are a medical equipment company and they're selling a million things, I'm not sure how much effort they put into creating a good breast pump with you in mind. Do they care about you, or do they care about selling pumps? You know what I mean? Can you get replacement parts? That's another huge thing. If it's a brand new company and they just rebranded this pump and launched it, do they have replacement parts available? Because you will need those. And if the company's not set up, or if they don't care enough to have those on their site, that's a red flag for me. And then always make sure you look, do they have something unique or something that you really wanted? If not, it may be better to go with a more known brand that is doing something different. But if you're like, ooh, that's super unique and interesting, I really want to try that, give it a go. But definitely make sure you have a handle on pumping. I never recommend pumps that have not been on the market for just like a little bit and have some information and user reviews to someone who's just looking, I got one shot to do this. This is managing my milk supply at work. Like, please do not get a cheap or an unknown thing. That's just a recipe for disaster. If you're an experienced pumper and you like trying new stuff, go for it. You're the ones we rely on to test these new products and see if they work or see if you like them or not. Other aspects to consider with wearable pumps. Nipple alignment is key when you're using a pump. You have to hit it right on every time. And the better your flange fit, the harder this becomes. So it's kind of that double-edged sword. We do want a flange that fits well and pulls the nipple and stimulates it in just the right way that works best for you, for your letdowns, efficiency, to pump quickly and get all the milk out that's there. But then nipple alignment has to be super well, which plays really well into making sure that the bra fit is dynamite too. Okay, we need the bra to be fitting well so that the pump can function the way it's supposed to, right? And then also to keep it in place so that the nipple doesn't fall out of alignment while you're pumping. Another thing to think about is the smart technology in these pumps. A lot of them with Bluetooth can do some cool things, pair with your phones, but just be aware that the companies can also push out updates and change the way that the pump functions without really you knowing. Sometimes they tell us when they're doing that and sometimes they don't. So, that smart technology can be a good thing. It also can be a bad thing. There's another video I'll post in the description for you on that. Switching between pumps can also be a little tricky, and we run into this problem with wearables because they often have really limited cycle speeds, and often the cycle speeds are tied to the suction strength in kind of a inverse relation. So that was a lot of technical information. Sorry about that. But it can be tricky to switch between pumps if you get used to a particular cycle speed. And so just be aware that if you plan on using multiple pumps, one of them being a wearable, we just kind of need to make sure that it's similar to the other ones that are working well for you. If you use one that's kind of like out in left field, it may not be that the fact that it's a wearable pump that is tricky for you. It might be that it is so not similar to the other ones that you're using that now you're just struggling to make it work. So just kind of keep some of those specs in mind if you plan on switching between pumps. I actually recommend having multiple pumps. If you are a first-time mom and you're just getting a wearable pump and you're like going to try and make that work, you either need to find a professional who knows what they're doing, who can help you figure that out, because honestly, I'm a little worried for you even with that. So I often recommend having a wearable as part of your experience, almost never as your only pump. And then the last consideration with wearable pumps is to make sure, what do you actually need? Sometimes a portable pump can be the best of both worlds for you. So if you have a small portable pump, here's one on my desk, a small portable pump like this, you can hook it to regular style flanges or you can hook it to cups, and you have a lot of versatility there, right? So you might be able to get more variance in suction, in cycle speeds, and then also in the type of flange that you're using. So if you want a cup, again, if you're using a pump like that, you're going to have tubes, but you can run them down the bottom of your shirt or out the top. You can cut them down. Like, there's a lot of things to do to make it discreet. It's not completely in the bra, doing its thing. But if you don't necessarily need that, a portable pump may be a better option for you to really maximize efficient milk removal, but also to give you those multiple options that you need. So consider that. I know wearable pumps can really seem like, the biggest thing in pumping and, God's gift to the working mother because now we've solved all the problems, but they can be tricky to use. So make sure you have a really good handle on pumping. So let's wrap up with some of the key points that we've taken away from this video and learning about wearable pumps. Number one, they're not for everybody. Some mothers just don't do well with a wearable pump, and I'm sorry, I wish it was different. It's not. They can work and be a really good addition to your routine and your life though. So there are some definite scenarios where we use wearable pumps, we figure them out, we make them work efficiently, but sometimes every once in a while, it's just like, this is not for you. This is just not gonna work. Number two, use with caution. Okay, we have to have a baseline to work from so that you know if it's working, so that we know what we need to fix. Okay, so we have to have a basic knowledge of pumping on a more traditional pump before we can jump into a wearable pump. Every once in a while, someone pops it on and it just works. That is really not the norm. Number three, this can be a primary pump, but most often it's supplemented into a more vast pumping plan, okay? It's tricky when you're managing your whole milk supply with a wearable pump. It could even be tricky managing your milk supply at work with only a wearable pump, with your baby doing the rest at home. So just be cautious. You can use it as an exclusive pumper, but just make sure that it's working. Be very cautious there. Okay, I hope that helped answer a lot of your questions about wearable pumps. I think the biggest point is be very cautious about trusting your milk supply with a wearable pump unless you fully understand kind of what you're diving into. I hope I didn't scare you though. These can be a really, really useful tool. I've had several working moms who a wearable pump has really saved their bacon and their experience and has made it doable for them. And if you want some help figuring this out as part of your more holistic plan, we do have a long-term coaching program where the application is down below if you want to apply, specifically for working moms, not only to help you figure out the logistics of pumping, but make this fit in your life in a more holistic sense. So if that's the kind of long-term coaching support that you're interested in, let me know. I'd love to talk to you. Any questions, put them in the comments. I'd love to experiment with you there. Otherwise, we'll see you back on another video. Happy pumping.